When he moved in, the waterbeds were moved out. Here's a look at the Mattel He-Man and the Master Universe cartoon collection, Spikor, Untouchable Master of Evil Combat. It's an exciting time to be a Master Universe fan. For longtime fans and a new generation of kids who love the action and adventure, it's time to experience the thrilling action and adventure of He-Man, Skeletor, The Secrets of Castle Grayskull, and much more. The figures in this collection stand 5.5 inches tall and have 16 movable joints, so they're highly posable for imaginative and action-oriented fun. Better be careful I don't prick myself on this pink and purple porcupine. Just before we get a closer look, though, at the Mattel He-Man and Master Universe cartoon collection Spikor, first the tape measure is going to tell us, at a safe enough distance, that the figure stands 5 3/4 inches in height, or the figure stands at 15 centimeters tall. I guess it is a good day to be a bad guy. When you start counting heads, you realize that Mattel's really been favoring the villains in this line a lot more than the heroes. In fact, looking at Spikor and comparing them along with the cartoon collection Skeletor, and then you continue to add heads on top of that. Here's what the figure looks like with the cartoon collection Beastman. Recently we had a look as well at Web Store. Here's what the figure looks like with Merman. Off to the side, Trapjaw. The San Diego Comic-Con Too Bad. What's left behind of all the body parts, I'm currently calling him Half Bad. Here's what the figure also looks like with the cartoon collection Evil-Lyn. Like, look just at how many villains we have so far and how many heroes we have. There's quite a lot more bad guys than there are good guys. And considering also that we're about to have a look at the cartoon collection Spikor, probably would make a whole lot more sense as well to bring in the original Origins Spikor so you can see the differences there as well. For all the 7 that care, the figure does come included with a little product sheet that shows you once again you can mix and match and swap the parts out. Take the head, take the shoulders, take the lower half of his body, pop off the boobs, and you can swap them around with other cartoon collection figures as well. This will be quickly discarded into the recycling bin, never to be spoken to again, until, of course, we have a look at Clawful. Speaking of Clawful, one of the things that the two figures are going to share is the exact same mini-comic, Honor Among Thieves. It does take a lot of elements from the episode The Games, in which you'll see in a second the episode-specific accessories are pulled from that specific episode. But even though there is some references to the games, more predominantly this space saucer down below that plucks from Eternia, both Fisto and Spikor as the two candidates that are going to be battling in the arena of games. Even though that's referenced down below, there really isn't a whole lot of other things that are referenced. The only thing that's a little strange, though, is about the front of the cover and all the images of He-Man inside. I don't know if He-Man has suffered a stroke, but something seems off on He-Man's face. The animation is very much different than the kind of animation style that we've gotten in the regular Origins comics, but I like it. I don't know if I necessarily like the way they've drawn He-Man. It just looks like He-Man. Why so long in the face? There's also referenced here as well. There's Clawful. They also do make mention as well of Clamp Champ. So I don't know if Clamp Champ's going to be making an appearance. I can't help but also point out that at the top corner, you may have already been able to smell him long before he came into this room. Here's also Stinkor. So there may be a few little teases for future figures we might get from the cartoon collection. I would definitely be interested in a Stinkor. Also on the back, there's some advertisements. 2 characters we've already had a look at, Web Store and Evil-Lyn. 1 character that we're about to have a look at, Spikor down below. And 1 character that we will be looking at in an upcoming review. I don't know why I had to do this. In an upcoming review, Clawful, Warrior with the Grip of Evil. I'm going to hold on to this, even though we're going to be seeing this comic again. Move that off to the side. Now, for the figure's accessories, he comes with 2 playing pieces from that episode, The Games. I've loved The Games. It's actually one of my favorite animated style Master Universe. There's something about the animation in games that's very different from regular Master Universe cartoon episodes, in which Fisto and Spikor have to retrieve these game pieces. Although the times that we've seen in the episode, I think they're usually more yellow and they're glowing than they tend to be red. You get them, they seem to be identical to one another. They also have the same holding handles. If you look at the way that the handles are designed, there's a little looplet right here that with the hands that he has now, you can just take the hands and have him holding onto those. They basically just fit around the handles. It looks really less like game pieces, and it looks more like he's carrying around steins of some sort of alcoholic beverage. Go. I suppose if you wanted to pretend, you can make this look like, instead of game pieces, you probably could pretend like they've stopped for a drink somewhere. I mean, honestly, I don't think it's the coolest of the accessories. You know my feelings when it usually comes to these, cartoon collection episode specific accessories. I just think that a lot of times they're throwing things that I just usually put into a bag somewhere down the road. Like when I'm done doing these reviews, I usually put the figures front and center on my shelf. And then a lot of times these things, unless they're weapons, I put them back in a bag somewhere. I have no plans at all of displaying them. Now, the Evil Geyser would have been a prime thing to include with Spikor for the obvious size of the fact that the character has to sit inside this thing in the episode. It's supposed to take a character that's already normally evil, and it makes him evil 10 times more over. Although, if you look at Spikor and the way he succeeds in the episode, I don't think he's any more evil than he was before he stepped into the Evil Geyser. Love if they could release that down the road. I don't know why I'm doing it like I'm outlining him in a box, but it's a pretty cool looking thing that Skeletor invents, and you never see it ever again. What you don't ever really see in this episode either is the fact he comes included with his hand trident. This whole throughout episode of the games, Spikor actually just has regular hands, so he doesn't actually have this, but is a good nod to the original vintage toy. And hey, why not? The Origins figure also had this as well. If you want to pick either one of the hands, either one hand can be removed, obviously being the fact that these are swappable parts. Let's choose, you know what, we'll go with this hand just because this hand is the closest one to resembling, well, it's the same side as hand as the one that we got from the Origins, so I'm going to stick with the same sides. By the way, in case you are curious too, if you went back to those game pieces, I know at the top they kind of look like they have a little peg. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? Well, I already thought what you were thinking. And I gave thought to it, by the way. If you look on the ends of his arms, actually, he's got a hole, but it's not the same size. Because if you were thinking, hey, could you put Christmas lights on the ends of Spikor's hands? You can't do that. You could probably maybe dowel a hole, but then he's not going to be able to fit anything else afterwards, and then you're just going to be stuck with these Christmas light hands. Nobody's going to want to do that. What you may do instead, though, is you can take the human trident, the little trident hand, I don't know what kind of human trident, that plugs in place. There's actually a little hinge here, too, so you can actually hinge this back and forth as well. It doesn't rotate here. This seems to be all like as one piece. It's painted fairly well here in silver, but it depends really on how you want to have this displayed. If you want to display it like Spikor from the cartoons, you're probably not going to be displaying it with the trident hand. You're probably going to beeline it back to this hand, and you're going to be displaying the figure with that way as well. Okay, so let's break down all the details here for Spikor. The thing that's interesting about him is obviously, like with the Origins and the vintage toy, this body isn't just armor over top. In fact, if you take the two halves and detach them, hey, are you starting to advertise that you can mix and match the parts? No, not. No. If you remove it, you can see that this is completely encased. So they haven't devised an idea just to put a torso piece over top of a regular build of body. They've actually completely remolded a brand new body piece similar to the original Spikor. So you just pop that back in place. All these spikes, by the way, even though they are prickly to touch, at least they're softer plastic. If you are somebody that runs around the house with toys in your hands, you would still want to be worrying about carrying around this guy, especially if you're tripping over something that you didn't know was in front of you. This has happened to me a lot of times. It actually happened to me a couple of days ago. I was carrying a box. I didn't realize there was a toy in the kitchen, and I took a tumble. Luckily, you don't see any of the bruises. They're painful, but you don't see any of the bruises. It would certainly leave, though, marks if you were to fall on this guy. You'll be, though, happy to know that the spikes are all soft and plastic. Even the spikes on his head are also soft and plastic. Yeah, I don't know how much the Evil Geyser really makes him 10 times more evil, and why Skeletor doesn't devise an idea to use that down the road. But like what we get here with Spikor in the episode is pretty much as like a useless crony for Skeletor. You could basically just take Spikor from the games, and you could have very well inserted any other one of his bad guy villains and just kind of thrown them in there instead. This was basically just a chance for Spikor to shine. You know, again, like for him being in this episode, it is one of my favorite of the Master Universe episodes, more for the animation, not as much for the story. I do hope, though, speaking of the games, that we do get ourselves a Fisto down the road. But in the meantime, obviously spending some time here with Spikor. I like the coloring of this guy. If you were to compare him to like the Origins body, the Origins obviously would have been based more on the vintage toy. You got a lot more darker purples. The spikes themselves are actually very similar in color here. And instead of having more of a pig snout on the original toy, the cartoon collection gives him kind of a little more of a regular nose instead. He still has yellow eyes, he still has fangs, but they're a lot more simplified. He still sticks to the idea that he has spikes all over his body. When we do look at Clawful, you'll see he takes a very much a different departure than the original vintage toy. I like the look on the pink on the arms. The pink down below on his lower legs look quite well. And, you know, again, like he's a decent looking figure. I don't know if I would have necessarily wanted to get a Spikor so soon into this line. I mean, speaking of things that end in or and start with S, no, that's not a riddle. I would have loved really if we had gotten a Stinkor before a Spikor. That being said, though, for the figure's articulation, Spikor's head does rotate does rotate all the way around. It does look down, it does look up. You can also rock it back and forth as well. Swivels in the waist, the arms do come out at 90 degrees. You can take the arms and rotate them all the way around all the way around this side as well. He has a single hinge in the elbow that comes with the territory, the same territory of rotating the forearms. You can rotate the hands all the way around. And even if you decide you want to display this figure with the trident, even though it's not really the most cartoon accurate, this does rotate back and forth, and there is a hinge. Can you see it? There's a hinge right there that allows this to rock back and forth this way too. Legs do split. They're on ball joints. You can take the legs forward, yeah, back, yeah. Bend at the knee, rotate the lower leg, rotate at the boots. Ankle pivot, ankle rocker. Figure does have toe holes on the bottoms of his feet as well. As a side note, though, I mean, breaking down also the regular territory when it comes to the articulation of these figures, I can't help but also stop and say he does seem to have a little bit of developing looseness on his lower knees. I don't know if that's just like degradation of like the molds just being used again and again and again and again. But I mean, to be like, this is what, the third wave so far of what we got for the cartoons. I just don't know. This worries me that we're starting to get looseness in the knees. It may not be on everyone's, but I did notice it here on Spikor. Like the look of the figure, whether you decide you want to display the figure with the trident in his hand or on serving as his hand, or you want to go back. Even though really when it comes to like Spikor, two things that go with the character are the trident on his hands and also the fact he's known for spikes. I think, though, with the cartoon collection, what I might end up doing, though, because I want to make them look the most like the cartoon, is I might just end up removing the trident and going back to the idea of the figure being displayed with his hand. Not only does he have both hands in the episode of the games, but also the majority of the times a few times that we've seen Spikor usually has more of a hand than he does have a trident. Speaking of things that appear in the episode, again, like we got game pieces. Not the most interesting things that include with the figure. I mean, the Evil Geyser would have been so ridiculous to think that, Mattel would have included such a large piece. It had to basically be a chamber for this character to stand inside. There's no way at all that they would have ever included an Evil Geyser. And how does it make him 10 times more evil when he's literally just as dumb as a doorknob as he was at the beginning of the episodes? I just don't know if these things will go probably back in the bag with all the other cartoon-specific accessories that we've gotten so far. The Games is definitely one of those classic Masters episodes where it gives the writers a chance just to select two randos that normally don't get a chance to shine that often, and it throws them into an adventure together. Selecting on the hero's side, of course, Fisto, and on the villain's side, we've got ourselves Spikor. Now, the excuse that they give this is that the saucer comes down to the planet of Eternia, and it wants to select the most heroic and the most villainous to perform in a planet of games. The thing about it, though, is Skeletor, realizing this, devises his one-time, single-episode experiment, the Evil Geyser, and he takes one of his cronies, just happens to be Spikor, and he throws him into this containment that makes him 10 more times evil than he was before. What is, first of all, the measurement of evil, and how do you take that and you multiply it by 10? Wouldn't it also create a plot problem that you've now got a character that is now 10 times more evil? Does that make him 10 more times evil than Skeletor? It doesn't seem to help him at all. He's still as dumb as a doornail in the episode. So what exactly did it take, and what did it do and multiply by 10? On the heroic side, of course, the saucer people choose, of all characters, Fisto. Now, I would have thought right away, like Man-at-Arms. Man-at-Arms, I think, no offense, might be a little bit more heroic than Fisto. Already people are putting up their hands and probably saying, well, wait a minute. Wouldn't He-Man not be the most heroic person on Eternia at the time? Well, at the time that the saucer people were coming down to choose their selection, He-Man was Prince Adam training with Teela. There's writer's solution right there. So we get a chance to have Fisto and now Spikor showcased in this episode. He-Man makes an appearance. Merman gets an appearance. It is, for me, by far, one of the best animated episodes of Master Universe, if you ask me. One thing, though, that's very obvious is that they did throw in accessories that appear in the games. Now, Evil Geyser would have made no sense just by the size and just how large this thing would have to be. It would occupy just as much, if not more, packaging than Spikor. So what they do instead is they throw in the game pieces. Now, the game pieces are a little underwhelming, honestly. They look more like things that are carrying around beverage than are things that are glowing. Funny, though, enough that in the episode, the things are glowing yellow, not necessarily red. But you get a red, you get a yellow, you get also as well a hand trident. Now, if you're following the canon of the cartoon, Spikor really shouldn't have the trident on the end of his hand. He had it in the vintage toy, but if you want to follow and at least have these guys displayed as they appear in the cartoon, then I think maybe the trident, like with the game pieces, will ultimately be put in a bag. At least that's my plan. I mean, the trident worked okay with the original vintage toy and also the origins of Spikor, but I think for the cartoon collection, I like to have these things look the most like their cartoons, so I'm probably going to take the trident and yank them back off his forearm and put it in the bag along with the game pieces. All in all, though, I do like the look of Spikor. I mean, he's using completely a different torso piece than all the other things we've gotten so far from a body standpoint for the Filmation Cartoon Collection line. He's using a completely different mold, very similar to the original Vintage and the Origins, and of course he's got a pretty cool looking head sculpt there as well. The colors on this guy look a little bit brighter, obviously. He's got now pinks in his arms and pinks in his legs, and he has the really cool head sculpt that they've given him as well. One thing can certainly be said for the cartoon collection is there's a lot more personality, I feel, for these characters than maybe some of the original Vintage toys. Spikor does have soft spikes at least, so if you are one that carries this guy around, you're not going to be impaling yourself. It's going to hurt, but it's not going to hurt as much. Have you guys had the chance to pick up Spikor? Let me know down below in the comments section. Also, let me know, too, what's your favorite episode of the original classic Master Universe? If you guys did enjoy this video, do it a solid, throw it a like. You want to stick around for more so? I hope so. Hit the subscribe, turn on the bell, come back, please. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.